everyone, I'm Samantha Polichinsky, and today I'm presenting a critical analysis on House Bill 86, formerly called the Nullify OSHA Act, or NOSHA. So NOSHA was introduced by Chip Roy in March of 2025. This bill calls for the complete elimination of the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA. OSHA is a federal agency that protected workers for over 5 decades. The NOSHA Act is currently sitting in House Committee on Education and the Workforce with no suggested replacement. That means no inspections, no enforcement, and no accountability from corporate interests. This isn't reform, it's abandonment. And as someone who cares deeply about labor rights, social justice, and policy ethics, I believe it demands serious attention. The reason why this matters and the reason I personally chose this bill is because it takes direct aim at the protections working people rely on. And as a policy writer who focuses on workers' rights, particularly union-backed protections, I see H.R. 86 as the clearest example of deregulation, masquerading as reform. This legislation hands control back to corporations and deregulated state systems, many of which have failed historically to protect laborers, especially those in high-risk and low-wage sectors. For me, this isn't just a policy issue. It's very personal. It's about fighting back against the idea that safety is negotiable. OSHA was first established in 1970 because people were dying on the job, often silently and often needlessly. Before it existed, safety standards varied by state and were often entirely absent in states where there was historically underserved populations. This agency was a victory for labor unions, public health leaders, and frontline workers demanding change. Since then, it's helped reduce workplace fatalities by over 60%, enforcing critical safety regulations and protected millions. To dismantle OSHA today is to dismantle a legacy built from collective struggle, blood, and advocacy. NOSHA would erase that progress overnight. Supporters of H.R. 86 claim that OSHA is slow, inefficient, and burdens businesses with costly red tape. They argue that states and industries can manage their own safety standards better, but here's the truth. OSHA struggles stems from being underfunded and undermined, not from being irrelevant. There's currently fewer than one inspector for every 70,000 workers. The agency needs an investment in modernization, not extinction. NOSHA doesn't fix real problems. It just ignores them for the sake of corporate greed and relevance. As we just talked about in the previous slide, this bill eliminates OSHA completely. No replacement, no phase-out transition, no plans for oversight. It assumes private industries and states will voluntarily fill the gap, but history tells us that they won't. Without OSHA, whistleblower protections vanish, inspector protocols disappear. Workers' safety becomes a patchwork of luck and geography, not a guaranteed right. This isn't reform. It's an open door to exploitation, especially those who are underserved and overwhelmed already. So in this class, we talked about the Krager and Stowa's model. So let's talk about OSHA through the lens of this model. So rationally, NOSHA doesn't work. It offers no infrastructure and no oversight. It also offers no replacement, and dismantling OSHA creates fragments where safety enforcement varies by state, employer, and budget. And as we know, as social workers and people who want to work in the public sector, that often is crazy different in terms of which state gets support and which state doesn't. Imperatively, it disproportionately affects marginalized communities working in high-risk jobs. For corporate executives, it might also feel like relief from compliance, but for immigrant and low-wage workers in meatpacking plants or youth on construction crews, it feels like the state is giving up on their safety because they are. Critically, it favors profit over people. It erases protection without concern for equity. Under every lens, this policy fails. As social workers and those who want to be involved in the public sector, we are obligated to fight legislation that increases harms and strips away dignity. which in this case, NOSHA does on every single level. The really great thing in this time right now is that we're not alone in opposing NOSHA, and also we're so early on in the legislative process that it would be very easy to gather a wide coalition. So unions have long fought for worker protections and will fight for them again. That's kind of their MO. They will continue to fight for the working man and woman and whatever version of a worker you are. Public health organizations know that unsafe worker environments can impact community health. And the more the less focus that the community has on worker protections, the more likely people are to get injured on the job, have mental health issues, and struggle with feelings of commitment to their community. Um, there's also other groups that would frame NOSHA as a direct attack on vulnerable communities. I mean, if you think really about minority workers, low-wage workers, youth, people of color, women, there are so many people that will be directly harmed by NOSHA and this idea of corporations sort of being in charge of their own workforce. Together, these coalitions could provide the data, organization power, and ethical force needed to fight back against this kind of bill, and also make sure that corporations do not overstep. So as we talked coalitions on the last slide, coalitions are more than just partnerships. They're multipliers. When organizations come together across labor, public health, and social justice sectors, they amplify each other's strengths. First, unified messaging ensures that we speak with one clear voice about equity and worker dignity. Second, shared resources like research, expert testimony, and organizing infrastructure bring credibility and depth to our advocacy. Third, coalition mobilization drives real action, from grassroots campaigns and lobbying to media outreach. And finally, a broad and united front commands attention. Lawmakers can't easily dismiss a coalition that represents millions. That's how we turn resistance into reform. And this is how we stop a bill like NOSHA from being passed. One of the final parts of this assignment was where we had to write our op-ed. This is where advocacy meets conviction. In my op-ed, Workers Deserve More Than a Safety Net Made of Smoke, I argue that HR 86 isn't just bad policy, it's a betrayal. Eliminating OSHA puts millions of workers in low-wage, high-risk jobs at greater danger. From warehouse workers and meat packers to caretakers and caregivers and construction crews. OSHA's existence isn't a bureaucratic relic. It's proof that the government has a moral obligation to protect lives. As social workers and those who want to work in the public sector, our role goes beyond empathy. We're called to act. This bill is unethical, inequitable, and dangerous. My op-ed is a call to lawmakers. Stand with workers. Do not let safety become optional. I think this is one of the coolest parts of this assignment. So my gimmick is a yellow hard hat, or why do we have to do yellow? Any color works. With a tag that says 1325, what safety is worth to millions. 1325 is often the average wage worker for a warehouse worker. And I would deliver this hard hat to lawmakers and simply say, this is the average wage of a warehouse worker. Will you tell them safety isn't optional? It's a simple symbol, but it puts the consequences of this bill in sharp focus. This isn't theoretical. It's personal, tangible, and urgent. And it also reminds them who their constituents are and who holds the real power in terms of their job. So the testimony section, here are my 10 key points. OSHA has saved lives. OSHA offers no replacement. Vulnerable workers are the most at risk. Self-regulation often doesn't work. COVID showed OSHA's flaws and importance. Workers lose protections beyond inspections. NOSHA violates social work ethics. Unsafe jobs affect whole communities. And broad coalitions oppose this bill, and we must reform OSHA, not destroy it. Let's be clear. HR 86 is a stab in the back to those who need it. We As a government, do not gut public safety because it's imperfect. We improve it. Social workers, policymakers, and advocates must stand together and demand investment in safety, stronger oversight, equity for all workers. Because if justice means anything, it means never forcing someone to risk their life just to earn a living. Thank you. And these are my sources for further reading if anyone's interested.